to commemorate the 16 days, excuse me, activism on gender-based violence. Thank you all very much for joining us. My name is Daryl Daniels, and I am the moderator for today's event. I will start with a brief overview of CPI. City of Peace Initiative Lagos is a registered non-governmental organization which was founded in 2017, but was registered and established as an NGO in 2020 under Nigerian law. CPI is a chapter of International Cities of Peace, which is a non-profit tax-exempt association dedicated to connecting, promoting, and encouraging the global Cities of Peace movement. CPI's purpose is to create a beloved community of nonviolence and wholeness, to take firm action to educate and inspire children in the restorative principles of accountability, compassion, integrity, forgiveness, and peacemaking. It also seeks to promote safer schools and communities and formulate effective responses to the challenges facing our societies: violence in schools and communities, disputes, and human rights violations. We believe in the effectiveness of common action, one team, and enlightened leadership to build a culture of peace, compassion, cooperation, and solidarity. I am so sorry. The screen is frozen. I don't know if the screen, you people can still see the screen because it's frozen on this end. Can anyone still see the screen?
I can see it.
Okay, great, great. Okay.
But I can see it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for the confirmation. So the objectives for CPI are to build and sustain the capacity for peaceful resolution of conflicts in Nigeria, to establish and maintain strategic conflicts early warning systems in Nigeria, to offer mediation and conflict resolution services, to organize a peace choir to foster peaceful coexistence in Nigeria, to offer pro bono conflict resolution services leading to a reduction of the caseload in court dockets. We also have active social media platforms, so we can be found on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, and LinkedIn. And they all have the logo and name City of Peace Initiative Lagos. We encourage everyone to please follow, like, and share to help create traction and awareness regarding our organization. We hope that your interest has been piqued enough to motivate you to join and drive our vision. Okay. We have lined up today a panel of 4 seasoned speakers, and they are prepared to make this an enlightening and thoroughly engaging session for everyone. Each speaker will be introduced before the topic presentation, and maybe some ground rules before I go into before I introduce the first speaker. So please, we respectfully ask that everybody mute themselves in case the host has not already done so. This will ensure that we have an uninterrupted session and the noise from your backgrounds do not interfere. We also respectfully ask that if you have any questions or any interventions of any kind, you please raise your hands by use of the emoji. And finally, the question and answer session will be after all of the speakers have spoken. So now I believe we can start with the first session, and I will be introducing the speaker. The topic for the first session is building the beloved community and prevention of domestic violence. Our speaker is Dr. Ayola Amale. Ayola Amale is an attorney, mediator, organizational ombuds consultant, and a certified peace builder. She is the lead of the City of Peace Initiative and is a development practitioner of over a decade. Ayo has over 2 decades experience as a lawyer and was a senior law lecturer and the head of the law faculty, King's University College, where she taught the LMU Law and the University of London law courses. She also taught alternative dispute and law in universities in Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal. So welcome, Dr. Ayola.
Thank you, Daryl. Good afternoon, all. I hope we have more people join us, but we have to start. Yeah, we need to know that the essence of this initiative is to build the beloved community, and building a beloved community ensures that we all respect ourselves, we respect time. Time is of the essence because time is our life. If we don't think time is anything, then we can't move fast. We can't achieve much. So these are part of the issues. I'm going to deal with building the beloved community and prevention of domestic violence. Thank you for inviting me here, Daryl, and good afternoon once more to everyone. We have to challenge the culture around domestic violence in Ghana. Sorry, in Nigeria. I beg your pardon. Yeah, we have to challenge the culture of domestic violence in Nigeria, because what do we mean by the beloved community anyway? We need to have a sense of belonging. That's what it means. We need to, understand that a community is where we belong and where we should have freedom. We should live in freedom. As Martin Luther King described this, he said, it's a space of social equity and belonging, in peace, in freedom, from prejudice, from corruption, from ill will, from insecurity, from terrorism. So the King Center, where Martin Luther King is having his major monument today, describes the beloved community as the global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. We can ask ourselves this question: are we sharing in the wealth of the earth? Even the wealth within our country, are we sharing in it in any way? Does it trickle down? Yeah, Martin Luther King Jr., the beloved community, presents to us ways to think about confronting domestic violence in ways that are loving and accountable. We all have to be accountable. So how do we develop the beloved community? It is the idea of a community as the agent of change, moving away from self-interest and isolation and moving towards well-being of the whole. That means Nigeria should move towards the well-being of the whole, not just the few who claim to be serving us, but they are self-serving. So we need to move from that to the point where we begin to see the whole. We begin to understand that we're all one people and everyone deserves a fair share of the glory of a country. A shared sense of belonging, that is, to build the social fabric and transform the whole country, transform isolation within us, within our communities, into connectedness and caring for the whole. I'm sure you've noted the word caring, connectedness, wholeness. These are the what our country should look like for a healthy and sustainable community that focuses on humanity, on associational life, and on the inside that all transformation begins through social justice, equality, equity, integrity, and the sense of citizen-to-citizen engagement. So, I mean, I'm telling you, as you sit where you are right now, you know that we don't have all of this. Unfortunately, I can't think of one thing that we have out of all of this, and it's so saddening because we have all the capacity, the expertise and resources that can actually transform Nigeria. We know this. We don't have to talk about what is underneath the ground. What about the human resources, the human capital? What about that? What have we done with it? We are now ranked among Afghanistan, Syria, particularly, I think the country is a failed state. There's no point deceiving ourselves. As we are right now, at the present time, Nigeria is basically a failed state. A lot has been destroyed, and we need to fix it. We need to repair it, and we need to be transparent about it. We need to be accountable. The context for a restorative community is very, very important. The existing community context that we have right now in that country markets fear, greed, rewards for non-entities, plundering the vulnerable. I'm sure you can recollect what happened during COVID-19. Every day in Nigeria, every moment in Nigeria, I listen to Arise, I listen to all the networks if I'm not in the country. I know what's going on there. So I know that even the so-called chiefs, obas, who are supposed to be custodian of our culture, who are supposed to be respectable people, in quotes, were supposed to distribute palliatives, and they sat on it. They sat on it. So, they are plundering the vulnerable, obviously, destroying lives and future through their political greed and ambition, their wickedness of heart. They worship self-interest. They're not thinking of any legacy for a country so endowed, not even a legacy to their own children, because if they think that they have a legacy for any child, whatever they call that child, they are deceiving themselves. Because a country that is so battered like that, how can your child, no matter what you are giving that so-called child of yours that you've stolen to bring up, how can that child stand up in the global community and be proud to say, I'm a Nigerian? These are the critical questions that we need to ask ourselves. If we're truly wise people, if we're really wise people who have understanding, who have thinking, who are quality people, we should ask ourselves, when they say Ayo, the next thing is Nigeria, because that's where I belong. And I begin to feel ashamed. That shouldn't be the case. I should be so proud, so proud to say, yeah, I'm a Nigerian. I don't have to wear the green, white, green. It should be seen that I'm green, white, and green. It should be obvious by the way I behave, the way I do my things. So these are the things that are going to build our community, a community where we truly love God and love humanity. We can't love God when we don't love our neighbors. And do we love anybody in that country where we kill ourselves every day? We still plunder, destroy public properties, pretend to be worshiping God, but worshiping money? We don't. That's not a beloved community. So we need to build a beloved community. Communities are human systems given form by conversations that build connection and understanding. Where do we have that? The conversations that build connection must often occur through associational life, where citizens are unpaid and show up by choice, because it matters that they show up for the good. It matters that they show up for the common good. It matters that they show up because they love Nigeria, not because they are even going to get anything. Do we have such people any longer? I'm not sure. We need to really look out to find one. Yeah. The new context that restores community is our possibility. Restores community, restores equality, justice, transparency, accountability, generosity, rather than one of destruction, of plunder, of greed, and self-interest. Communities that are human systems. The conversations that build connection most often should occur through associational life, where citizens are unpaid. The future centers on the accountability that citizens choose and their willingness to connect with each other around possibilities of making Nigeria great. Nigeria, it's by itself a great country, I must tell you. It's so blessed. I often think of Nigeria as a country that has missed its future. Why do I say that? I have gone out to so many places. There's really no continent I have not been. And I see countries that don't have a quarter, not even a fraction of what Nigeria has. Talking of human resources, talking of human capital, talk of human natural resources, talk of weather, talk of what are you going to talk about? We've got it. But what about the human being called Nigerian? Is that human being quality? We should ask ourselves. We keep talking about we have a big population, we're massive, the most populous country in Africa. What are the quality of the human being that are so many? What are we doing to develop them so that we can have a country that is healthy, a country that thinks, a country that knows that they have to move ahead? We are not moving an inch. Since independence, we're stagnant. I've not seen nothing in that country when we can't even go out and feel secured. You know, countries that don't have what we have gone ahead to be called developed countries. We know where Singapore is today. We know where China is. China is competing with the US. I beg your pardon. For whatever you think, I was in China, I was like, wow, this is even better than New York. The infrastructure there is outrageous. And these are people that we used to look down up their goods. I remember in those days, I don't want a made in China thing. Now, if you look at yourself, just look on your table, your breakfast table, and see most of the things that you have there, the things you have in your bathroom, they're made in China. And that is it. You are helping the economy. You are helping them grow at your own disadvantage. We need to embrace ourselves, embrace what is ours, embrace Nigeria and truly love Nigeria, not pretend to. It's not wearing green, white, and green that means that you love the country. These days, I see even presenters, they wear white. I just shake my head. I laugh. Sometimes I say, wow, I mean, I wish they truly love this country. You know, so the new context that restores community is one of possibility, equality, justice, transparency, and accountability, generosity, rather than one of destruction, plunder, greed, and self-interest. Communities are human systems. We need to build them. The future centers on the accountability that citizens choose and their willingness to connect with each other around possibilities, around potentials. We have the potentials. We know that people go out there and they excel. Why can't they do that in their country? Because there's no enabling environment. There's no infrastructure. There's no transparency. There's no security. So how can you develop the human system? I have been a system of the university. Recently, I pulled away. I had to pull out of the university system. I was a part of that system in Nigeria, part of it in Ghana. I taught in Senegal. I know what it looks like. I've been to institutions abroad, perhaps giving lectures or whatever. What I'm saying is, I look at the students there, they have the pride of their alma mater. How many of us can say, I'm proud that I came out of a university in Nigeria and actually be serious about it? How many of us, currently what the university system is like is disastrous. And you begin to wonder what has gone wrong. Why can't we build our systems? And we talk about JAPA. What is JAPA? JAPA means destroying Nigeria. If you look at it very well, but you also have to think about the individual that are JAPA because they are frustrated. They see no future in that country. And that is why they choose to go to, embrace the unknown, because even Nigeria has joined the unknown. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. We have to develop our country. We need to shake off all the evil that has been entrenched in that country and build sincerely a beloved community where everyone knows that they belong, truly belong, and have a stake in that society, deepening the community, deepening our communities and community development. Not a shallow one that turns away from others, not a shallow community that is fear-based, but a deep community that turns towards other people and working together to create deep love. We know each other's families. We know each other's community, ethnicity, everything. But are we embracing that? We have the concept of Omoluabi. We know what that is. That's our culture. We have the concept of Ubuntu. That's an African culture. I am because you are. So where did we place that? We suddenly are swallowing hook, line, and sinker what we think is the white man. Are we the white man? The white man has its own, they have their own culture. It's working for them. It is working for them. The ones that are not working for them, we see it. We see it in the gun violence and so many other things. It tells you it's not perfect. We have the good part of us. Why do we choose to throw it out? We have to bring that back. The beloved community and domestic violence don't live together. They are daylight and darkness. So beloved community and domestic violence prevention. What does it mean? It means exploring the concept of beloved community that provides an opportunity to recenter prevention work to reflect the fact that domestic violence takes place within a context that is not healthy. In practice, it offers a chance to honor each other. We need to honor each other, honor our families, honor our spouses. Do honor our spouses. We won't hit them. We won't beat them. We won't insult them. We will respect each other. It's not the matter of a woman respecting a man alone. A man needs to respect a woman. It's a mutual thing. Every human being should be respected from top to bottom. Your last baby, that's just a toddler, deserves to be respected. How much more the head of the family? So what I'm saying in essence is we need to begin to embrace ourselves, to show ourselves love, deep community, to appreciate ourselves and honor ourselves. If we do that, we won't be having violence. Putting people and community at the center, creating transformation within ourselves. It starts with us. Don't point fingers. We don't point fingers all the time at people. We look at ourselves. What are you showing? You want peace? Show that you are peace. Do the things that others will not hit you. Do the things that others will not want to kill you. Sometimes we invite evil. So we need to create transformation within our families, within our community, engaging the community to create a vision for a transformed society. A beloved community, a community when practiced creates the possibility of building relationships in order to heal broken people and broken communities. As it is now, our country is completely broken. Whether we want to believe it or not, that's the truth. How do we heal Nigeria? How do we heal the people whose future has been destroyed, whose lives have been destroyed, whose families have been fractured, either through kidnapping, trafficking, terrorism, Boko Haram, so much. Sometimes I become overwhelmed. So But we must not give up. We can fix it. If we really are determined, we can fix it. So we have to continue our individual relationship while building the beloved community. We hold the possibility of a radical change, believing that it is doable. That's the Nigerian spirit that I know. Nigerians don't think there's something they cannot do. I love that spirit. We're resilient people. We're people, we are go-getter. We don't care. We dare to move where devils are scared to tread, because we believe that there's nothing that is impossible. That's possibility that we have. We should bring it into our national building, not just in our own private lives. Let's believe that it is possible to make Nigeria great, because Nigeria itself, it's a great country, but the people in there are not making it show. It's unfortunate. So we need to transform that. We need to start telling ourselves, truth telling and sharing our histories, what we were before. We know where we were before. We've deteriorated. So we need to recreate ourselves. Only then can we begin to better understand each other and our communities and begin to find ways to undo the harm we have all been exposed to and taught so much in our lives that does not align with the principles of the beloved community. Many of our systems, our policies, we talk about domestic violence, but we know the policy in Nigeria that a man can rape his wife and get away with it. Is that a beloved community? If you truly love your wife, will you like to rape her? If there's true love, if there's really understanding, will you be raping your wife? That's a question. And why is there a law that still remains that shows that you can encourage violence? That's violence. And it tells you that our policies have issues. So we cannot build a community that is beloved in that way. We need a community that is whole. We must learn to create such open spaces to tell the truth telling that we have to tell ourselves. We have all been exposed to these systems, policies, institutions that have been created with the end goals in mind rather than reflecting community values. How do we begin to shift these structures and institutions to hold principles of honoring our people, honoring our children, honoring our futures, honoring our women, honoring our girls? A whole lot of out-of-school children in Nigeria. A whole lot. It's so shameful. A country that is so blessed. And we keep talking about population. The population we have, a population of out-of-school children, population of vulnerables who can barely feed, populations of people who can't go to school. Is that a pride? It isn't. It isn't in a country that has so much, cornered by some idiots, some foolish people, so no good people, non-entities, people who are not supposed to be seen in daylight. They should be in the prison yard. I'm telling you the truth. Most of them belong there. They don't deserve to live among decent people. So these are the people that have turned us into a garbage dump. We need to honor our people. Emphasizing grace and acceptance, holding space for disagreement, and valuing diverse perspectives. Nigeria is a federal state. Everybody has a stake, no matter what tribe you are, whether you are minority, whether you are LGBTQ, whatever you are, we are all human beings. We've been given freedom from above. No one should take that away from anybody. So everyone in Nigeria, an Igbo man should be president in Nigeria if he wins an election. A Benin man should be president of a country that is federalism if he wins an election. A Tiv man can be anybody, as long as you're a Nigerian and you won an election, you are entitled to it in a country that believes in equity, human rights, that believes in honor, that believes in the beloved community, in living in peace and harmony. Why do we suddenly have issues? Because people don't respect these values. and they are greedy. And anyone who will overturn an election, anyone who will do anything to pick or take what it does not belong to him or her cannot do anything for that country, because it means that he's a thief. He's going there to steal. You steal the vote, you're going to steal and loot the treasury, and you are no good. We have to fight for our rights in that country. We shouldn't be accepting kilafeshe. What can we do? Otishele. No, I get sick of that. We have to pursue our destiny. It's in our hands. We can't leave it slip away just because we are ready to take trash from people who are no good, who are ready to finish a country, not just a life, a whole country. They are criminals, the worst criminals you can find on earth. Establishing and maintaining a beloved community depends on establishing and maintaining covenantal relationships. We know what a covenant is. For Christians, we know when God had a covenant with Abraham, we know what that entails. It's a sacred promise of meaningful relationship. Meaningful relationship starting from the home. That's the unit of a society. Meaningful relationship between husband and wife that kids can emulate. Kids can see. You don't tell your kids don't steal when you are a thief. They see what you are doing. I'm a writer. We often say show and don't tell. And that is how our lives should be like. We should be showing who we truly are as a Nigerian, not telling. If I have to tell you I'm an innocent person, it means there's something wrong. You should find me innocent by what I do or what I say. You see, so now our leaders have not only shown us, they have proven to us, they have proven to everyone on this planet. What's that? What's going on? Daryl, can you unmute? Can you mute?
Dr. Ayo, yes, and I was actually going to mute you in 1 minute. So if you can round up in 1 minute.
Okay, no problem. I have to be a beloved community woman myself, because others have their own time and I have to respect that. So we need to understand restorative practices, covenants, community values. We don't need to be told about values. I know Nigeria, I know our culture, I know it's filled with values that we used to imbibe and live with before, and we had peace. What had happened to those values? We need to go back and retrace our steps and recreate ourselves. In Yoruba, we say Katurawabi, Omoluabi. We have all of that in cultures in Nigeria. That is to say, you need to honor your humanity. You need to honor others. You need to respect them. You need to do good. And you need to understand that the whole matters than you as an individual.
Indeed, Dr. Ayo, the whole matters more than the individual. Thank you very much for your presentation. In summary, Dr. Ayo started by defining the beloved community as a place of social equity. She says that it is a place of global vision in which people can share in the wealth of the earth. And she also said that Nigeria needs to move to a place of caring and connectedness, because communities are systems and we need to develop them. This is what will guarantee the prevention of domestic violence. We can fix this. Thank you again, Dr. Ayo. So now we move on to our next speaker. Please remember that you can ask questions, but the questions will be taken after all of the speakers have given their presentations. So we will move on to the next speaker now. And perhaps I should say that by way of indication, if I'm sharing my screen, so for as long as you're still within time, this is to the speakers now, for as long as you're still within time, your bio will be shared, will be on the shared screen. But as soon as you see another person's bio being displayed, it means that you're out of your time. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next speaker. And the second topic for the day is emotional and psychological effects of domestic violence, treatments and healings. Our speaker is Dr. Amalachukwu Okore. She is a divorce coach. I will just quickly read through her bio. Dr. Amala Okore is a consultant pediatrician practicing in Lagos, Nigeria. She's also a counselor specializing in family life counseling. She's an associate family life practitioner and a certified divorce coach. She's passionate about helping people in difficult marriages as they make hard choices. She believes in the sanctity of marriage as an important building block of our society, but also believes that divorce is not a stop sign and people can thrive even after divorce. So please, everyone, join me in welcoming to give the next presentation, Dr. Amalachukwu Okore.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. You're
Good
welcome.
evening.
So,
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's so good to be here. And I just want to appreciate the conveners of this meeting. And thank you for having me. Thank you, Dr. Ayo, for a beautiful start to this meeting this evening. Oh, okay. Thank you for a beautiful start to the meeting this evening.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm talking about emotional and psychological effects of domestic violence, treatment and healing. So I'm sure we all know first of all, what domestic violence is and the huge impact it has on our society, on families and the nation as a whole, because the family is most important that builds our society. Cause a disruption at national level recently because it is breaking down our families, and we need to pay attention and we need to talk about it and keep on talking about it. Domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship, especially intimate partner relationships, where a partner wants to exert control, over another person. And domestic violence can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be financial, but a lot of times when we talk about domestic violence, our minds first of all go to physical violence. But I used to say that sometimes emotional and psychological violence is even more severe, but I speak a lot on these things, and somebody corrected me that I shouldn't say anyone is more severe, because that encountered physical violence, thinks it was the worst thing on earth. So each and every one form of violence is actually quite severe and makes quite a significant impact on the people involved. So we can't afford to trivialize any of them. We can't afford to say, oh, at least you.
Dr. Amala, can you hear me? Sorry, Dr. Amala, my sincere apologies for interjecting your presentation at this time. Can you hear me? There's an interruption. Yes, there's an interruption in your presentation, and I suspect it's your bandwidth. So maybe if you stop sharing your video, it might help.
Everything is not between you, but yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, just to let you know that the recording has paused. Dero, why?
So,
Okay, can you hear me now? Maybe I should stop my video.
yes, that's what I said. That please stop your video
Okay.
so that, yes, it will reduce the bandwidth. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Is this better now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure where you stopped hearing me, but
That more severe. You said
awesome.
types of
Awesome.
uh,
Okay, yes.
violence.
So
Yes.
thank you. So none is more severe than the other because the experiences of the people who encountered those forms of violence is valid and should not be trivialized. So when people go through the stress and trauma of domestic violence, sometimes it could just be, the abusive words, the lack of access to financial support that you expect from your partner, the belittling, name calling. You see some partners telling the other person, you can't amount to anything. Without me, you are nothing. You can't achieve anything if I'm not in your life. You're very fat. Nobody else would marry you. All those things are forms of psychological violence. The person is not beating you physically, but he's beating your mind. She's beating your mind and making you feel smaller than you actually are. And none of those forms of relationships is healthy. So let's not limit domestic violence. Let's take out that mindset that, oh, domestic violence is about physical violence. So I got into this terrain because I was in a similar mix and I was never beaten for one day. Nobody ever raised a hand on me. But I would hear things that after hearing them, I would sometimes even prefer that I was beaten. At least when you come out with a black eye, people will say, they wanted to kill you. Then you come out, sometimes you come out with nice makeup and nobody understands what exactly is going on. So we mustn't trivialize these things. And if we're in spaces where people can come to us and express to us, this is what is going on, let's not downplay the effects that it has on them. These things can lead to stress, a lot of stress, mental and emotional stress. You find it difficult to coordinate your life. You find it difficult to coordinate your work. Some people who are going through family violence actually find it difficult in the workplace because they can't think, they can't process very well. They live in fear. They live in fear. There are times where you can't even sleep properly because you're afraid of what next will happen. You're sleeping in your family, in your marital home, and somebody opens the door and you jump up like a thief came in simply because you're afraid. You don't know what is going to happen next. There's isolation because the power of the abuser thrives in isolating the victim. And that's why when you see people who are in abusive situations, one of the things they will tell you is that gradually their support systems were cut off. They cut you off from your family, they cut you off from your friends, the people who will be able to tell you that this thing is unhealthy. The abuser cut you off from those people. You see them saying, why do you interact with this person? Must this person be your friend? Your mother should not come to our house. She's the one destroying our marriages. And all those things are just tactics to get you isolated from the people that can rescue you when there are issues. So some of the effects of domestic violence could be physical, it could be mental health, it could be spiritual consequences. The people who have been in this scenario have things like post-traumatic stress disorder. So even when eventually they've been rescued from, or maybe they've left the violent space where they were, they still have flashbacks. So I remember, a personal experience I had after I had dealt with the violence and come out of it. I noticed that when I hear some certain kind of voices, some kind of male voices, I start sweating, I start having headaches. I lose my mind. I can't think. And, my heart will start beating really fast. And I said, what is going on with me? So I'm a doctor, I'm a medical doctor. So I'm able to process some of these things because of the knowledge I already had. By the time it happened 2, 3 times, I recognized that this was a form of PTSD. Those voices, they were not talking to me. In fact, one of them was my neighbor who was having an argument with his wife. At the other flat. But meanwhile, in my own bedroom, I was sweating, I was having headaches, I was having palpitations. That is a form of PTSD. You see people who have been through violence, they can't go through to the same places where maybe where they lived or where they stayed with their intimate partner. That's why you see some people that if they've come out of a situation of violence, they'd rather relocate because they just want a change of scenery. So PTSD is real. Depression is another effect of domestic violence. Depression is a very severe effect. You're losing interest in the things that previously mattered to you, in activities that you previously enjoyed. Your libido is down. You don't want to go to work. You don't want to do anything at all. Depression is real. And so if you know someone that is going through a depressive phase, your friend is usually very bubbly and excited, and all of a sudden lacks interest in anything in life, you need to help her check it out or help him check it out. Suicide. And suicide, before we get to suicide, suicidal ideation. If you're with somebody who has gone through any form of domestic violence, psychological, emotional, physical, and you start hearing things like, sometimes I feel like killing myself, please do not leave that person alone. That person needs to get help, because it's from suicidal ideation that they actually graduate to committing suicide, because they can't deal with the pain, they can't deal with the pressure and the effect of what has happened to them. So suicide, is a major thing. People, because sometimes when people come out of domestic violence situations, there's so much shame, so much shame. And these things we're talking about are not limited to a certain social class. It happens across all social classes, like people who are poor, people who are rich, people who are doing well in their careers. And so, especially for those people who have attained certain measures of success in other areas of their lives, when their marriages fail, when their relationships fail, there's so much shame. And a lot of times they can't face the scandal that comes out of it, and suicide becomes an option because they can't deal with the pain. They can't deal with the shame. They don't want to have to keep on explaining to people. So if you're around somebody who has gone through this and is beginning to say, sometimes I feel like killing myself, don't trivialize those kind of statements. Fear is another thing. Fear of the unknown, fear of how the future will be, especially if you have been in a long-term relationship and you have to come out of it. Some people have so much fear. They don't know how life is going to be. But I can tell you for free that at the end of the day, everything usually works out well if you just keep your head up and able to walk through the storm. Isolation. Because the path you've gone through has made you feel less of yourself. Sometimes you feel that you're not enough anymore. And so you begin to isolate yourself from your friends, people that you feel that, oh, their own life is better because they've been successful at their relationships. You find out that those friendships that you have had, you don't want to be a part of them. You feel unwanted. You feel that people are talking about you. Meanwhile, they're not talking about you. They're just living their own lives normally. But because of what you've been through, you start feeling like, oh, these people are talking about me, and they're isolating me because I'm now single, because I'm now divorced. Yes, sometimes people isolate you because, oh, your marriage has ended. Some people will say, oh, I don't want you with this your friend because she's a divorcee. She may influence you. So those things can happen, right? But it's not always the truth that it happens. So sometimes you actually isolate yourself in your mind before people actually isolate you. You start feeling unwanted. Chronic pain. chronic pain, and just general physical unwellness. So sometimes when you go through this kind of the trauma of psychological and emotional abuse, one of the things that happen to you is that you stay in a state of unforgiveness. You're angry, you're bitter, and all those emotional challenges over time begin to affect your physical health. And you find yourself that, you're having migraines, you're having pain, back pain, stomach pain, all sorts of illnesses that can't be cured by a doctor because those illnesses are generated from your mind and how you feel and the experiences you have had. Chronic pain is a major thing for people who have gone through difficulty in their relationships. We've talked about shame, there's anxiety as well, fear of the unknown, fear of tomorrow. If you have children, fear of how your children are going to turn out. There's just so much that can make you have fear, and then you begin to have anxiety. And sometimes anxiety states can be so severe that it affects your day-to-day functioning. And that's why sometimes you see people who have gone through abuse and the trauma of it, they can't function at work. They start losing their sources of livelihood because they are not able to cope. You begin to question your sanity. You begin to question your memory. There's one of the things that happens in abuse, and it's called gaslighting. That is when the intimate partner who took you through that violence makes you questioning your sanity. Like, they can start telling you things that telling you stuff like, oh, and you start thinking, did this thing really happen to me? Or maybe I'm making things up in your mind, and you start questioning your sanity. There could be substance abuse. You start looking for ways to cope when you've gone through intimate partner violence. And one of the low-hanging fruits is substance use. We know that substance use has become a pandemic in recent times. And so it's usually something that people who go through, psychological and mental trauma can easily reach out to because it gives them a short time high and they feel good within themselves, for a moment. Substance abuse, another thing people do is, sexual abuse. They begin to expose themselves to reckless sexual lives just because they're trying to find a sense of joy and a sense of peace. They blame themselves, they are angry, they are resentful. All those are the effects of domestic violence, right? And I also want to say that abuse and violence can escalate. And so if you see somebody who is in an abusive situation, don't say, oh, they're not beating you. They're not beating you yet, but abuse usually escalates. From the negative words, from the words to cut you down, typically it will escalate. How do you treat? One of the things we must continue to talk about is breaking the culture of shame and silence. You cannot treat people who have gone through abuse when it's shrouded in shame. Until you're able to break out of the shame and say and come out and ask for help, you really cannot, survive abuse and survive it well. There is no shame to this thing. We need to break the culture of silence, break the culture of, hiding things because I don't want people to know that this thing is happening to me. I don't want people to know. You don't want people to know until we carry your corpse, God forbid. You don't want people to know until you lose your mind. I was reading somewhere that about 2/3 of the women in mental health wards in psychiatric hospitals is from domestic violence. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. If you are going through a difficult patch in your marriage, in your relationships, speak up and get help. Speak up and get help. Support groups are a great source of help. People who have gone through, the same thing that you have gone through and are thriving regardless of it. Support groups are a great source of help. Support groups really helped me, in my own time of difficulty. And when I talk about support groups, when I talk about support groups, it could be, support groups in your church, in your spiritual group. If you belong to, a church that supports people who have gone through this, support groups are great. The people have shared similar experiences, and there is nothing to be ashamed of. And the power of community. Dr. Ayo talked about I'm hearing
some interference in the background. My apologies.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you mute that person, because I can't see anything on my screen, unfortunately. My screen seems to be hanging.
Okay.
Joseph, please, can you mute that person? So sorry about this, doctor.
Yeah, that's fine. So support groups.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I can go on.
Yes, please.
Okay. So support groups are a great source of help. Dr. Ayo talked about caring and connectedness. Support groups can provide that. Self-care is very, very important. When you've gone through an abusive situation, you need to reinvent yourself. You need to reconnect with yourself, find out the things that make you who you are. And one of the best spaces where you can begin your journey of healing is in a therapy room. I would not end this conversation without talking about the power of therapy and counseling as you seek to, reinvent your life. Even if you don't know who to help. And I'm not talking about church counseling, I'm sorry to say. I'm talking about professional, trained counselors. Because one of the feedback we get from people, especially those of us in the religious space, sometimes you go for counseling with your pastor who is not trained, and the person is telling you, oh, they beat you because you were not submitting. They beat you because you must be submissive. Go and submit. No, I'm talking of seeking help with trained professional certified counselors who understand the far-reaching effects of the trauma that you have been through. There is no shame in seeking for help. There is no shame in crying out when you feel that a marriage or a relationship is gradually breaking you down and you are losing yourself. So therapy, counseling is extremely important. Now, anytime we talk about therapy or counseling, we usually hear, oh, their fees, their rates are usually high. If you cannot pay for therapy or counseling, get into a support group. Usually there's a power of community that helps each person to heal because you hear people's stories. So even if you can't check into one-on-one therapy services, support groups could come as for great help. And then self-care. Do the little things that you enjoy. Find the spring, get the spring back into your life. Get the laughter back into your life. Nobody has a right to define you except you give them that right. And you need to take that right from the abuser. You need to take that power from abuser and get your life back on track. So while we would say that, while I would always say that I support, I'm an ardent believer in the importance of preserving the family structure, as a way of preserving our national structure and our national heritage. I would say that we must also start breaking the culture of shame and stigma associated with people who end up getting divorced. There are times that there is just no way out except for that marriage or that relationship to come to an end. Painful, yes. But you can thrive. The important thing is that you're living and you're providing a healthy and a safe environment even for your own children. So if it gets to that point, the people who choose that route also have to be supported and encouraged to thrive without shame. Marriages that have to end in a divorce is not a stop sign. It doesn't mean that your life has ended. People thrive even with a divorce. So even though we encourage people to seek for help, to build their marriages, to see if you can do couples counseling to restore your marriage, to stop the abuse, to stop the trauma, if all else fails, You need to choose your life. You need to choose your sanity. And you also need to choose to have a healthy environment for your children to thrive. And if that means taking a break from your marriage, you can still thrive and you can still survive and you can still be whole, even if that happens. So I'll take away for tonight. The major things I want us to take away is that emotional and psychological effects from domestic abuse is real. It's not until somebody breaks a hand that you know that things have gone terribly wrong. Emotional abuse is real. The impact it has on people is real. Therapy helps, and you can thrive again, even in the midst of those difficult situations. So thank you very much for having me. And it's a privilege to have spent this time with us tonight. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Amala Okore. You did justice to this presentation.
Thank you very much.
On time. Well done. And let me also
thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me also say a big thank you, for being vulnerable enough to share your personal experience with us in the course of your presentation. So in summary, Dr. Okore said that domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior towards others. She said it can manifest through physical, emotional, financial, or psychological behavior. She said none is more severe than the other, and so none of them should be trivialized. It cuts across, domestic violence cuts across stratas and has a huge impact on our society. She listed several effects of domestic violence, and she also said that abuse and violence can escalate. And finally, she said the pattern can be broken, that we can break the culture of shame and silence. The power of therapy and counseling from professionals is very important for reinvention. And she said if the fees seem too exorbitant or perhaps unaffordable, for such professional sessions, the abused can get into a support group and then do the little things that they enjoy. Thank you again, Doctor. We truly appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so now we will go into the third topic of the day, and it is titled Prevention of Domestic Violence, Challenges and Prospects. The speaker for this presentation is Mr. Olumide Kayode Omosebi. He is a founder of Genesis Help Initiative. I will just quickly read through his bio before he starts. Olumide Kayode Omosebi is a lawyer and founder of the Genesis Help Initiative, a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization that helps victims of domestic violence. Please excuse me. My sincere apologies. Something seemed to have gotten caught in my throat. I'm sorry. So I'll just take that from the top again. Olumide Kayode Omosebi is a lawyer and founder of the Genesis Help Initiative, a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization which helps victims of domestic violence and abuse with 2 decades of free services in mediation, intervention, and litigation in all areas of abuse, gender crimes, and offenses. He is an on-air personality on the popular radio program Relationship 360 on Nigeria Info 99.3 FM every Saturday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. He's also a resource person and regular guest on Marital Matters and DVA on Smooth 98.1 FM, Mainland 98.3 FM, Radio Nigeria 103.5 FM, Metro 97.7 FM, Redeem 93.7 FM, and on StarTimes Cable Network, Nigbati TV channel. He is a founder of the Awareness Against Domestic Violence and Abuse program in secondary schools all over Lagos State, where GSS1 to SS3 students are taught and equipped with basic knowledge on how to identify all forms of abuse and steps to take. They are also taught about the applicable laws and government agencies they can approach in cases of abuse in order to give them a fighting chance against the pandemic and consequences of domestic violence and abuse in their homes, schools, and workplaces. He is also the founder and coordinator of the Genesis Volunteer Network, with volunteers across 20 local government areas and 37 local council development areas, providing information and support in cases of domestic violence and abuse and child defilement across Lagos State. He is a very sought-after public speaker who is a father of 4 and husband to 1. Please join me in welcoming the speaker, Mr. Olumide Kayode Omoshebi.
Good evening. Thank you very much for.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for that, for the welcome note. I really appreciate. I really want to appreciate this initiative to commemorate the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence by the CTI. I appreciate the organization and planning committee of this webinar of building the beloved community and prevention of domestic violence and abuse. I would go straight into the my portion, which is prevention of domestic violence and abuse. Domestic, that is also known as intimate partner violence. We have about 6 kinds of abuse. So there's the emotional, there's the psychological, there's the financial or economic, there's the physical, there's the sexual, and the cultural. And as my previous speaker had mentioned, that whenever abuse is mentioned, people just think it is the physical, the beating, and all that. It has become necessary that measures to prevent domestic violence be at the front burners, because Shija reported there's a non-governmental organization called Shija. They go around and research into various topics. And in Nigeria, they researched about 6 years ago, and their research stated that in Nigeria, annually, we lose between 300 to 350 women to domestic violence and abuse every year. You should also understand that, sorry, I think I have something with my camera. Is my camera showing the other way around? Okay, please let me know if my camera is working so I can.
It's working, we can see you.
Okay, okay, okay. So if we are losing between 300 to 350 women annually, and we just have 365 days in a year, that tells you almost every 2 days there is a fatality to domestic violence and abuse. This year alone, we've lost about 317 women to domestic violence and abuse in Nigeria. And these are just from reported cases and those that through our network we have found, because a lot of cases, before you even get there, the families have buried the bodies. They say they don't want any any inquisition, you know, God has given, God has taken, especially from the Muslim folk. And the funny thing about the incidents of domestic violence and abuse is that the major facilitators are, number one, tradition and culture, and secondly, religion. Religion has played and supervised a very, very detrimental, how would I put it? Let me rephrase my English. Religion has played a vital role to back up culture in the fatalities of we suffer from domestic violence and abuse. The statistics that we have as of today show that 1 in every 4 marriages would end in a separation or divorce by the 2nd anniversary, and 1 in every 3 women will suffer domestic violence or abuse in the first year of their marriage. 87% of domestic violence, separations, and divorces are from Christian marriages. And that had shown us from a long time that the fact that you're a Christian in Nigeria makes your marriage more likely to fail than to succeed. I'm sorry, I'm dealing with a lot of interference here. I forgot that I also have another program. Here we have seen over time, I have been doing this for about 20 years, and I have seen that the major factors that facilitate domestic violence and abuse are religion and tradition. Tradition always enables and forgives the male abusers in particular, and even as a consequence, also shames the male victims. Religion encourages prayers and is very big on returning victims back to their abusers. It is a matter of God hates divorce. Religion, as I have popularly titled, that the function of religion more has been to supervise the affliction of the victims, and telling you you have not prayed enough, telling you go back. It's always something you have not done or you have done, an act of omission or commission. I would go straight to how we can prevent domestic violence and abuse. The first is education. Low literacy has always been identified as a factor that negatively affects every effort at the prevention of domestic violence and abuse. You'll find out that abusive men, according to conclusive studies by the World Health Organization, conclusive studies show that abusive men are men that grew up watching their mothers being beaten by their fathers, an intimate partner, or a family member. That is how the conclusion that children raised in abuse will grow up to become abusive adults. It's almost certain that if you have 3 children raised in an abusive home, you would have a minimum of at least 1 or 2, or all of them growing up with the increased propensity for abuse. Even those that try and say to themselves, I will not allow, because I hate what I saw when I was growing up, and I grew up, I would never lay my hands on. But the issue is when you have watched violence repeatedly as a child, it becomes not a matter of being pushed, it becomes a matter of instinct, because that is how you were raised. So a lot of people do it, hate doing it, but can't stop doing it. The second factor, after being, sorry, someone is talking.
Please,
can I go ahead?
The speaker unmute themselves, please. Thank you. You may proceed, sir.
So we have the issue of people who grew up in abusive homes or were exposed to abuse as per the compound, their domestic, immediate domestic vicinity, where you are raised in a place where every night you are hearing your neighbor, your uncle, your aunt, your dad, your mom, your sisters. It becomes a problem for you when after a while you accept it as normal. Education plays a very, very important role because low literacy enforces and enhances the propensity for abuse. Now, this is the problem. Where your education is low, your tradition will be high. Something has got to fill that void of knowledge, either education or tradition. It cannot be void. We have the three-pronged enforcers in nature. Number one is tradition, the second is religion, and the third, education. So where education is lacking, it will be tradition. Where tradition is lacking, then religion will take over. Those are the loudest voices on the planet. You must succumb to one. The government must ensure that education is more than tradition or religion, because education would let you know of your rights. Education would let you know that it is wrong and that there are laws. As a matter of fact, I was speaking at a function and I was telling people about economic abuse. And some men did not understand, where I told them that telling your wife to stop work where she is able, she's educated enough. I have had cases where a first-class wife was told to resign from work to choose between her job and her marriage. Eventually, she succumbed because even religion was telling her, church pastors, that is your job now more important than your marriage? Pressure came even from family, where they're saying, this is everybody is going through, you just submit. Submission is the language of religion, where I told them it was absolutely wrong and against the law. Everybody laughed. Which law? And I told them that Section 12, subsection 1 of the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act states clearly that a person who causes forced financial dependence or economic abuse of another commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years or to a fine not exceeding 500,000. It is law, but people do not even know that when you disenfranchise a person, even the state loses taxes on that person. That person becomes useless to the state that trained it, that educated it, and becomes useless even to its own family members. And what happens after this? The husband dies suddenly, and then the wife, having resigned, no job, no business, turns either to a beggar, begging people around, or eventually starts running sexual favors for men, because for a man to drop, he will tell you, meet me at room 204. I will give you the money, but you have to lay on your back. And these are women that if ordinarily were left to prosper, they would be able to be financially capable when the man is no more. For example, during 2020, about 4,000 people in this financial sector lost their jobs because of the lockdown. Can you imagine 4,000? Let's say out of the 4,000, we have 3,000 men. Suddenly no jobs. And they had told their wives also to stop work. Now we have no money coming in the family at all. What will the children eat? Suppose now that the man who told you to stop work has no work. You cannot tell people to stop work because it makes no economic sense. And thank God the law also sees this. Education would also have informed the woman that, no, this is against the law. And this will be a deal breaker. I keep telling anyone that tells you to choose between your job and your marriage, choose your job. Because when that man leaves you, or when that man suddenly dies, what will now happen? You start begging. You cannot get a job at 48 when you have not worked for 10 years. Education tells you that domestic violence and abuse is an offense. Section 19, subsection 1 of the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act tells you that a person who batters his or her spouse commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 3 years or to a fine not exceeding 200,000 or both. We need to educate people about crimes, about these laws. And the second thing about education is enforcement of laws. That is the second point, how to prevent domestic violence and abuse. The measures are execution of laws. We must enforce. A lot of abusers get away with it under the supervision of the state and the executive. You take a matter to the police say, this is a family problem. You should go back and, make it work. Why? Because the policeman is also abusing his wife in his home. So you are reporting an abuser to another abuser. What would they tell you? Go back. You go to your pastors who have no sense of morality. There's a difference between morality and religion. Morality is doing what is right, no matter what you are told. Religion is doing what you are told, no matter what is right. Where you have people without sense of morality, where you have people who are not exposed, you have someone who is not educated, telling you that is educated what to do. It is just a reversal of fortune. You see a lot of men who had no job to pick up clergy would now be telling those that are heads of industries what to do. It is just funny because we have, it's as if religion is the suspension of common sense. We must enforce the laws against gender-based violence. It must be enforced because that will discourage people from abuse. When you want to beat your wife because of your propensity to beat, when you want to beat your husband because of your propensity to beat, and then you just remember that your older brother is still in prison. He has not yet come out because of the same thing that he did. You will turn the story to, well, God saved you. If it will change because you cannot start pointing to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people who are in prison. Under domestic violence and abuse, we also have child abuse. We have child defilement, which has taken over the polity of Lagos State. At least we have supervised the burial of 36 6-year-olds, people between the ages of 6 and below. Next week, we are also going to bury another minor that was defiled in Ayobo, in Ayobo, just last month, defiled by the neighbor and killed. We had him arrested. He's at the state CID now. The child abuse. The most vulnerable ages for the female child is between the age of 0 to 5. I would add to 6. And then between the ages of 16 to 19, where they are 4 times more likely to be sexually defiled or raped. Those the ages of 16 to 19. The laws must be enforced. Abusers, defilers must be, you see, the discouraging factor about the process of justice in Nigeria is that it might take a while. To even get a protection order might take you up to a year, where the person who you are looking for the order for may even be dead by the time it comes out. Now you are resorting to self-help because it is strenuous. After a while, the victim gets tired of going to court. After a while, they no longer show up. After a while, the case just fizzles out, and then the abuser is released and recycled back into the community. This particular case we are talking about the lady, the minor that we are going to lay to rest next week, the gentleman who defiled her was just released from prison. He's 22 years old, just released from prison, came out to do the same thing again. And the first time, he actually also murdered the person. So how is it possible that we are recycling these people? The third, I don't want to take too much of our time there. The third is the promotion of gender equality. The fact that women are discriminated against, and that is traditionally, I mean, you are born as a woman, the first thing you know in your own immediate family is that you cannot inherit anything from your father. Is that no matter how old you are, whether you are 40, you have a 15-year-old brother, when you have a meeting, you can't talk. It is your 15-year-old brother that will speak. That decisions will be made by someone just by reason of your gender. We need to promote gender equality, give women positions both in the private and in the public sector, and educate on gender equality. The fact is that women do better than men in academics. The fact I was reading a Harvard Law Review and a program I had, FIDA Law Week 2 days ago, and it was there at the Harvard Law Week that women make better bosses. 85% of the time, the women are proven to pass tests and are structurally, mentally better at handling corporations than men. When you look at banks that have female CEOs, you look at countries that have female presidents. For example, during the COVID pandemic, the countries with female presidents had the least casualties in COVID because they had taken let me look for one word, though. They had taken preemptive steps before it broke out. While the men were still considering, the women had shut down their borders, banned air flight travels. They had taken motherly preventive measures, securing, look at Angela Merkel of Germany, also the female president of New Zealand, and all of them had the least casualties. It is a fact that women do better. We need to promote gender equality. And then the fourth that I always recommend is the Sexual Offenders Register. It has to be robust. It has to be robust. You see, by the time you want to date somebody and you have that, let me just first check your name to see whether you have committed any crime before, whether when people, you know that you can't afford that your name be in this register, when the law has been enforced, it will so totally discourage this crime. So education is number one. Implementation of the laws. People should not get away with it. Okay, let me close with this. In April, I always talk about the month of March, which peaks the rates of domestic violence and abuse in Nigeria. I don't know why, but the month of March is always the month of deadly domestic. It determines the peak of the curve of domestic violence throughout the year. Check it out. I don't know why. The month of March just becomes bloody. I had noticed it as far back as 10 years ago, and I had been sounding the warnings. This year, the month of March, we had buried 36 women in 21 days. Of the 36 women, 18 had left but came back because of this, their culture and tradition, and they had to pay for it with their lives. I was also one of the lawyers in the case of Osinachi, who had left her husband for 1 year, 3 months, but the pastor called her back. Again, that as a gospel musician, which church do you think will call you to sing? You know, God hates divorce. And as one of the backbones of Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, this, that, she was blackmailed and bullied into coming back. Today, she's dead. The 4 children that she was holding on to, the father is in prison, the mother is dead, the children are where? In April, we lost one of our listeners to my program on Saturday mornings at Nigeria Info FM to domestic violence. She contacted me. We had raised money in conjunction with some people for her to get a flat. But this is what happens. At the end of the month, her husband collects her salary. You know, so it was an issue that the husband was also an elder in church. So we had planned. That morning, it was as if the man knew that money had entered the account. So around 4 a.m. that Saturday, he asked for her phone and she declined. It became a tussle. By 6 a.m., he had beaten her and tied her with a barbed wire, an electrical cable, which cut through her neck, and she died. By the time she died, he tried to put her corpse in a Toyota Sienna bus, and the neighbors had come around and the women gathered, they almost killed him. You know, when we had him arrested, we found out that this was his 3rd wife. The first wife died. The second wife ran away. This is the 3rd wife dead again. The issue here is that we are recycling abusers where there is no register for you to even check. Her name is Fumi Hosanna. You find that we have been the same set of people going back into society to raise followers and commit acts all over again. And the children that are born are now potential grenades in future to other children. They would marry your own son. They would marry your own daughter. And this is why these have become necessary. Let me close with this. The backbone of any country is the implementation of justice. Where the justice system fails, the whole country goes into self-help. And self-help means I have a right to defend myself, which is even to the death of the other party. It is very important. One of the major, besides education, is implementation of the laws against domestic violence and abuse. If possible, make it steeper. Shorten the process of the judiciary. Family court sits once a week. Can you imagine when about 40% of the cases are from family-related matters, but the court sits once a week, but the criminal courts and others every day of the week? It does not make sense. Thank you very much. Don't want to exceed my time. And God bless.
Thank you so much. Wow. I've learned so much. Boy,
thank you.
Don't have a country, do we?
Mr. Olumide gosh, my heart is heavy from your presentation. But I guess we forge on, and thank God
so good.
you mentioned that sorry, Dr. Ayo, can you please okay. Yes. Thank God that you showed that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So I will just quickly summarize what Mr. Kayode Omoshedi said. My heart is really heavy from everything that he said, because he shared so many statistics that are very scary and very damning. And I guess this means that there is a lot of work to do. Part of the statistics that he shared shows that Nigeria loses a woman almost every day of the year to domestic violence. He listed the 6 types of abuse, and he said that the major factors which facilitate domestic violence are tradition and religion. Very sad. Religion. Who would have thought religion would play such a significant role? In fact, he said that religion plays a detrimental role to back up culture in the fatality. This is really sad. In any event, despite the scary statistics which he shared, He made us to realize that it is possible to prevent domestic violence, and he listed the following to aid in combating it. The first is education. The second is enforcement or implementation of laws. The third is promotion of gender equality. And the fourth is to maintain a sexual offenders register. He closed by saying that the backbone of any country is the implementation of justice. Thank you very much again for such an enlightening session, sharing all those statistics.
Thank you very much.
Just how much work we need to do and how we can go about it. Thank you. Our fourth speaker for the day, or let me start with the topic. My sincere apologies. I don't know what's going on with my screen. I'm actually looking for the topic. But the speaker is Abiye Tam-George. And she will be talking about eradicating domestic violence and all the legislations around it. I will just quickly read her bio before she starts her presentation. Abiye is an accredited regional attorney mediator with the Compliance Advisor Ombudsman for the International Financial Corporation and the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency of the World Bank Group. She is a certified mediator with the Lagos State Multi-Door Court House. She's a member of the Distinguished Panel of Neutrals of the LMDC. Abiye has a PGD in Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution. She's an astute mediation advocate and a motivational speaker. Her love for education has made her pioneer different seminars and workshops on educational advancement. Abiye is a visionary in chief of ATG Legal, a cosmopolitan law firm with consulting legal practitioners, mediators, and arbitrators. Her acclaimed community legal literacy project, titled Live Better Every Day, offers free legal advice and counseling on various legal issues in communities and partners in different locations. It is also a digital program created to give sound, incontestable, accessible, and delightful legal advice and opinions to individuals, institutions, and governments. She is a vice president of the Association of Environmental Lawyers of Nigeria, the former vice chair, Nigerian Bar Association. She held several positions. I will skip those because of time. And finally, Abiye is a member of the Board of Trustees, Lawyers in Oil and Gas Network, Association of Environmental Lawyers of Nigeria, and City of Peace Initiative Lagos. She is also the non-executive director of Xylos Group International. Abiye established a mobile comprehensive library as part of a mass literacy and enlightenment campaign with specific focus on improving the reading and writing skills of children. She initiated a popular reading program for children in schools titled Read a Book a Day. She's passionate about how children live, grow, and the opportunities offered to them. She constantly engages with children and teenagers to expose them to knowledge. Her hobbies are counseling and writing. Her urgent desire is to establish a comprehensive family and child development center. She will readily donate to any cause that protects and promotes the well-being of children and peaceful families. Please join me in welcoming our fourth speaker for the day, Abiye Tam-George. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I'm just laughing because I mean, the profile had taken the whole day and had said so much already. Can I be heard? Can you hear me?
Yes, Abby, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. I initially wanted you to just read 2 lines. Okay, so the day has been fast spent and we have benefited immensely from the beloved community to the effects of domestic violence, to preventions. I mean, it's been all said. A lot of the things that I would have loved to touch had also been mentioned by our last speaker, Olumide. We've come a long way, including protesting for the issues of domestic violence, child abuse, and all of that. Okay, so I'm just going to look at whether our laws are sufficient, whether women are ready to demand for the respect of their rights, and what can we do differently? We're a peace association. And so part of what we want to achieve today is to create alternative measures on how we can eradicate all forms of abuses on women and children. So what I'll do is to just take us into the laws that can effectively, if
Wow, what happened? Perhaps I've been kicked out.
Abby, are you still there?
Oh, I think it's her internet. Perhaps it's her internet. It's unstable.
Okay, Abby, sorry, doctor. Abby, if you can hear us, maybe you should take off your video so that it can stabilize your bandwidth. Oh. Is Abby back with us?
Perhaps you send a text message to her on WhatsApp, or what do you think?
All right.
Yeah, I'm sure it's an unstable internet. Oh boy.
Sincere apologies to everybody. We'll sort this out in a few minutes. Thank you.
hello. Hello.
Abby?
Okay, I think I'm back. Sorry.
Okay, she's back.
I was
Yes, Abby, please. Yes, Abby, sorry. Is she still there? Abby, can you still hear us? I will suggest you turn off your video to conserve your bandwidth.
I've just done that now. Okay, so we have the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that has spelled out the fundamental rights that every human being has. So a woman is a human being, a child is also a human being. And the fundamental rights that are enshrined in the Constitution are actually well expanded to address any form of abuse. So for instance, I have a right to my personal liberty. I have a right to my dignity. I have a right to my life. I have a right to express myself. I have a right to freedom of movement. Now, all of these rights are impossible rights. But do we make use of them? No, we don't make use of them. As women, we can actually go to courts and demand for the enforcement of these rights. So you see, if we have the force of decency and decides that we want to stop domestic violence in our communities, or if they are happening to us, if we want to stop this, we can actually go to court and demand for these rights to be implemented, to be pronounced, to be safeguarded. And so we want to ask that, are we ready to actually stop domestic violence in our communities? And the simple answer is, we are not ready. And I say this because for even the educated and aware community, I've seen a lot of women that are very much educated. They are not ignorant of the law, but yet they are in denial. They are not ready to enforce their rights. And we've said that, look, it could be as a result of victimization, stigmatization, and whatever names that we had given to it. It is time for us to wake up and own ourselves and demand for our rights. We've got quite a lot of laws in our country to address every form of abuse. If we look at the criminal code, you notice that there is even a provision that talks about offenses against morality. In the criminal code, in chapter 24, it talks about offenses endangering life and health. So you have grievous harm, you have failure to supply necessaries. All these are offenses. And all these things are tied to the emotional, the psychological, the economic abuse that we've mentioned. And there are provisions of the law well spelled out for us to use and stop the perpetrators. But we are not doing that. And for us, this is a call to say that, look, whatever discomfort that you have facing, discomfort of any shape, there is a provision of the law that can save you from that discomfort, from that traumatic situation, from that near-death, risky circumstances that you face. We talk about the VAP Act. We talk about the Lagos State Protection Against Domestic Violence Law. All of these laws initiates in one way or the other that we can actually call to an end domestic violence. But we are not doing that. We're not ready for it. We're calling on every citizen, particularly women, that it is time to brazen up. It is time to say no to victimization, to say no to stigmatization, to say no to intimidation, to say no to misinterpretation of religious affairs, to say no to traditional sentiments and biases, because it is actually killing us. We can't have peace when abuses pervades the entire community. And so we must wake up and do the right thing. It is very, very important. Another area that I'd like us to look at is the fact that we need to be a step ahead. And what do I mean by being a step ahead? Before all of these abuses, there are steps that we can take to reduce these abuses from occurring. As a group of passionate peace advocates, we can start to form clusters and teams of peace advocates in our communities. And we need to provide protocols of engagement within our communities to forestall some of these abuses. Until we're able to do that, it's going to be difficult to change the status quo. And that is because we have embedded consciously and unconsciously certain practices that can't just go away. They can't go away because we need to relearn. They can't go away because even our children at the age of 4 years, at the age of 3 years, had already internalized some of these havoc practices that can make you numb and dead. They already have it. Some people do not understand that children are young, but they learn by your actions. They don't learn by what you say. That's the way that God has programmed them. You don't need to teach a child to carry a cup somewhere. Just carry the cup 3 times in a day, and that child picks it up without you directing that child to do so. So sometimes when we think that we can lie to our children when there is domestic violence, when parents are abusive to themselves, and we think that the children are not aware, we're just fooling ourselves. And what have we done? We have internalized those bad attitudes in them without knowing. And so it's going to be difficult for them to do otherwise, because they have learned what is wrong and they're going to produce what they have learned. So for us at CPI, what we want to do is to begin to interrogate these anomalies in our communities and institute frameworks and protocols of engagement. So for instance, in a community, if we have a protocol that if a man slaps his wife, he's going to sweep the community for 1 year. If a woman slaps her husband, she's going to sweep the community for 1 year, and that is enforced. You can imagine what that could do in eradicating domestic violence. Just like Mr. Kayode said, Olimide said, in the courts, you find out that something as urgent as protection order, you can't get it in 1 year. So what's that protection order for? So the courts are also not ready to eradicate domestic violence, even if we have laws that can do that effectively. So we're left to go back to the communities, come up with programs that can really help, come up with frameworks that will monitor and evaluate. And for me, what we should do going forward, I mean, at the end of this conversation, we should begin to ask whether we have any form of checklist or engagement protocols on domestic violence in our communities. For those of us in estates, I think that we can come up with such protocols and embed it within the code of conduct in that estate. These little things we can do to begin to eradicate domestic violence. Thank you. I need to stop here because I know the day is well spent. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Abby. You stuck to time, but managed to still drop some insights for us. So in summary, please just give me a minute. Yes. So in summary, Abby has helped us to navigate the available various legislations. And the very first legislation for consideration is the Constitution. and which spells out the fundamental rights of everybody. And Abby said that the courts are a viable avenue to safeguard the rights as provided in the Constitution. She also mentioned the Criminal Code, the VAP Act, Lagos State's law against domestic violence has all been legislations in combating domestic violence and providing for people's rights generally. Thank you very much, Abby. Can anybody hear me? Or am I muted? No. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for the confirmation. So we have reached the end of today's event. And I'd like to say a very big thank you again to all of our 4 speakers who dropped nuggets and insights for us all. Thank you. We truly appreciate. I believe that we're all leaving here today enriched and better enlightened. Thank you very, very much. We will now take questions and answers. And I will encourage everyone who has a question to please drop them in the chat room. I do not see any questions yet. Do I take it that there are no questions? Or should we allot a few more minutes for the attendees to drop their questions?
No questions. Please go ahead.
Questions? What about comments? You asked for comments too. Perhaps they have comments or something.
Okay, so questions and comments. Thank you, Dr. Ayan. Questions and comments. Well, I mean, if you have any sort of intervention, you may please do so through the chat room. Nothing in the chat room yet. Dr. Ayo, do you have a comment?
I'm right here. I'm right here. Yeah,
Yes.
I won't tell you, I have to tell you the truth rather. I'm a bit disturbed with the data, the rate of a rape and killing. I didn't know that it's so bad. It's disturbing. Honestly, I don't know what we have to do, but we have to do something, and it's critical. Just like Abi said, looking at the law, because that's the way we can handle it, the law, name and shame. We have to name and shame them because they are destroying the community. They are destroying our lives. How can this be happening in the midst of human beings? Even animals don't behave this way, you know? So this is an eye-opener. That's why it's good to have this forum so that we have a platform to discuss and engage and really know what's going on in our country, because the state of our country is very critical, and we can't continue like business as usual. We have to really sit down and find solution to this problem. And of course, the solution cannot rest with us alone. The law, it's critical in this, and enforcement of it is not just on paper. I mean, how will that happen, and what shape will it take? And are we going to see a case where a guy will rape a child the first time, get away with it, the second time, the third time, even killing them, and still, I mean, he's still there out in the open? Are we safe? These are questions, you know. So I don't want to start another presentation, but the truth is that This is another problem that we're saddled with in that country. I don't see anywhere where there is no problem in that country, unfortunately. And we have to begin to do something. We have a whole lot to do. And we need good leadership. Apart from
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayo.
Oh, you just shut me off.
We need good leadership. Thank you, Dr. Ayo. I see that Dr. Okore also has an intervention. So Dr. Okore, if you will unmute yourself, you have the floor.
Okay, good evening again, everyone. Those statistics were very scary. And one of the things that has come to the front burner is that we need to encourage women to be empowered financially, because a lot of times, so personally, when I'm counseling women, a lot of times when you see that it is obvious this person needs to leave, the next question is to where, with what? And when it gets to that point, you're looking at somebody with 2, 3, 4 children, and she doesn't have a job. And we know that for abusers, when they cut you off, even the little financial supplies they were providing, they also cut it off. So, I mean, until the law comes in to intervene in your case, you're probably left for 1 or 2 years with no support coming from this person, and you have young children. It's difficult for women, very difficult. Then again, we also have the other subset of women who are financially empowered, but also don't want to face the public shame. So I've encountered at least 2 women. One she was like an executive director in a bank, very highly placed, very highly placed. The other person, very highly placed. These women own their homes where the husbands locked them out of. Like, the homes were bought by them. But then, because of how highly placed they are in the society, they didn't want any scandal to be attached to their name. So we have across the social strata, people have different reasons why they cover this thing and choose to stay with it, even when it's killing them slowly. So in addition to all that has been said, we must break the culture of shame and stigma associated with divorce, and women must be encouraged to be financially empowered. For it just takes away a huge chunk of the decision whether to stay or to leave, when a woman knows that if she leaves, she's able to reasonably take care of herself and her children. So we need to keep on encouraging our women. Don't sit down and cross your legs. You must be empowered. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that intervention, Dr. Okore. I'm afraid that because time is fast spent,
Please, could I have a minute? Just 1 minute, Madam
Okay.
Dara.
All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, you have it.
So this is my summation to every woman. I have told pastors that you cannot join jobless people. A woman must have a job. When you look at Proverbs 31, the virtuous woman had a job. When you are in marriage, once abuse starts, reproduction must stop. You cannot keep on reproducing in abuse. What you are raising are future abusers. That is what you have the higher probability of raising. Once abuse starts, reproduction must stop. You must not give birth to more than you can handle. You have abused people having the higher number of children than normal people. You have people in marriages, normal, very okay, void of abuse, 1, 2, 3. You have people in abuse, 5, 8, 9. And then at the end of the day, you are driven out. Women must have a job. If you don't have anything you are doing, then don't get married. It is not that you must be employed. You could also be an employer. You could learn a skill, develop a talent, but have something to keep you. And once you are in, you see, the way you react to the first abuse would determine if there would be another abuse. It always starts from the first abuse. The moment you bow in submission to the first abuse, there will be another. But the moment you stand against the abuse, then it will not continue. It is always, it's the first point of abuse is the most critical. Your response to it is the most critical. So, number one, have a job, have a skill, have a talent, make money. Number two, once abuse starts, reproduction must stop. Number three, please, once abuse starts as a pattern, you need to leave. We are burying more people than there are people getting married in a year. So let me just end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I don't know.
Sarah, can you give me a few seconds?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah, because I just want to say something. I really like what Mr. Olumide said about once abuse starts, stop. Why would you be producing in that circumstances? I mean, even dogs wouldn't do that. And we find that Nigerians are more productive in the bedroom. We should get out and change our country, change our communities, and do positive things. And women should stop listening to religion. That's not worship. That's not what the Bible says. Religion has taken over our country to the point that we don't worship God, but we're just religious people. And we're not even taking the good sides of what religion teaches us. We read it upside down. The Bible is read upside down. Some read their Qurans upside down. That's why our country is in that state. Because, I mean, if a religion will allow an abuse to take place, then that's not God. God is not there. So the pastors are not telling us the truth. And we shouldn't be allowing pastors to control our lives. We should have our own personal relationship with our God. You respect your pastor, but it shouldn't dictate to you what your marriage should look like. You get me? And that's why people are dying. We need to understand what the word of God truly says and stop being fanatics. And that's the country.
If I may even interject, the same Bible tells you, be fruitful and multiply. You must be fruitful first before you multiply. You cannot multiply on dry ground. You cannot multiply on infertile soil. You would raise damaged seeds. Damaged fruits are what you will get. You have to be fruitful first. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have the population, but we don't have the quality human beings. So what trash is that? I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it? It's okay. Thank you, please. The country is just too much for me.
I guess the truth is we can go on and on and on. Again, I'd really like to say thank you to all of our speakers. We have made it a truly informative and enlightening session. But you know, even though with the revelation of the statistics, it does seem like it's a very scary incident, and you know, it almost does seem insurmountable. What I like about what all the speakers did was that they showed us the light at the end of the tunnel. They showed us that indeed this is surmountable, it can be prevented, and it can be eradicated. We just need to put our minds to it, you know, all hands on deck, and then take all the necessary steps. They have shared all the tips, and hopefully we will be able to eradicate domestic violence, even if it's small steps at a time, but we will get there hopefully one day. The video will be available on all of our platforms. I think we're even live streaming right now. I believe, Joseph, yes, we're live streaming right now. But the videos will be available on all of our social media platforms. So if you want to rehash, you can just go on any of our social media platforms and you'll see the video there. Thank you to all the speakers and to all the participants, everybody who logged in to join us and make this a memorable evening. Thank you very much. And I hope that we take the lessons away and we make our society a much better and safer place. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Dr.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.